Hey, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. This morning, I was researching Texas and came across the name of the man pictured here, Chaplain Nicholas A. Davis of the 4th Texas Infantry. He was known as the chaplain of Hood's Texas Brigade. Davis is truly a colorful character. And in some ways, he's like just about every other clergyman who served in the Confederate and the Union Army during the Civil War period. They held partisan positions about the war and culture on par with just about any other partisan person on either side of the conflict. Of course, these guys had an edge because they were eloquent writers, powerful orators, and they had that position from the pulpit to broadcast their message. Davis, outspoken, fervent, is a textbook example. He's quite unique, and his uniqueness is actually starts right from the uniform he's wearing. You can see him here. He's posed pointing at probably a passage in the Bible. There's a candle next to him. And look at that uniform. The uniform itself was one that he designed. It's custom made, black with a little ornamentation along the cuff. The uniform was so distinctive that it actually caught the attention of people in the street of Richmond during the early part of the war. So speaking of Richmond, a printer published his book in 1863. It's one of the earliest histories of the Civil War. And if you want to look it up online, it's titled The Campaign from Texas to Maryland with the Battle of Sharpsburg. So it's an early history of Texas during that part of the war, that early part of the war into Sharpsburg, or as we know it today, Antietam. You're going to find a number of writings inside this book, and one of them, just to give you a flavor and a sense of how Davis wrote and how he took on subjects and how he picked apart narratives. One of his essays is called, quote, "By what name shall we call them?" Of course, he's talking about the Yankee oppressors who invaded his Southern Confederacy, how they dared invade his Southern Confederacy. In no uncertain terms, Reverend Davis lets you know which term he prefers. So I want to read the opening passage of his essay just to give you a sense, just to define how he takes apart the term. Here we go. Quote, "Abolitionist, Unionist, Federals, or Yankees. We should speak the same language with as much concert as we should act together in strife. All the above names have by different ones and by the same ones at different times been applied to our enemy. Words and names are the signs of ideas and the vehicles of thought. We then should adopt the vehicle which would most certainly convey our meaning. Names are also significant, and while we would represent and convey our thoughts in words, those words should be properly selected, that our whole meaning, nothing more nor less, may be understood. Each of the above names are significant and have a different meaning, and it is impossible that they can, with propriety, be indiscriminately applied." So what he's saying here is there's 4 names that you can call Northerners: abolitionists, Unionists, Federals, or Yankees. I'm not going to read the entire essay because it's rather long, but I can tell you he carefully takes apart and defines each of those 4 terms. The preferred term, which I'm sure you can imagine by now, is Yankee. And I am going to read you his definition so that you can get an understanding of where he's coming from. So here we go. Yankee, the popular name for the citizens of New England. This is what Webster says it means. And this is what we want, a name for the people of New England. And as their history is well known to the civilized world, the whole world will understand us, and we will understand ourselves when we call them Yankees. It is the only name or word in the English or any other language, living or dead, that can be applied with full scope and force. It extends to all their 10,000 schemes of deception and fraud. Here Davis goes. He's starting to go off now. It extends to all their 10,000 schemes of deception and fraud and comprehends their every act of lying and stealing from the days of Washington till the present hour, and all their political, legislative, executive, commercial, civil, moral, literary, sacred, profane, theological, and diabolical history. Davis is on fire now. He continues, the word has ever been used in contemptuous ridicule of their conduct towards each other and their dealings with the rest of the world. And there is no other word in all the range of human learning which will convey to the mind of every man, both in Europe and America, in Africa and the islands of the sea, so many and correct traits of character as the word Yankee when applied to the Yankee. And thus applied, it means meddlesome, impudent, insolent, pompous, boastful, unkind, ungrateful, unjust, knavish, false, deceitful, cowardly, swindling, thieving, robbing, brutal, and murderous. He continues, with this name, we involuntarily associate the story of the clock peddler who stole the landlady's counterpane off her own bed and then sold it to her. Shoe soles made of birch bark, wooden hams, patent medicines, chalk milk, and wooden nutmegs. It carries us back to the days of yore and enables us to look at the different phases of society from the time they burnt old women for witches to the days of the inauguration of the women's rights conventions. Exhibiting the style of dress worn by Puritans in beautiful contrast with the fast age that puts their women in breeches. Of course, he's talking about the women's rights progressive movements of that period. He continues, to answer the ends of their greed for gain, they have not failed to use all means in their power, however dishonest, and when detected, they have ever been ready to seek a difficulty to hide their shame. But when they have been insulted and kicked for their pusillanimity, they will even then make friends for the hope of a dime. This Yankee country has given birth to socialism, Mormonism, Millerism. I recommend you look that one up. Spiritualism and abolitionism, with every other devilism which has cursed the nation of unionism. And as there is one word that will express all these and 100 more isms, I prefer to use that word and thereby say all that can be said on this subject. The term is Yankeeism. So there you have it. The words of Chaplain Nicholas Davis, chaplain of Texas, of Hood's Texas Brigade. Till the next time, happy trails.